The world's two largest superpowers are fighting for strategic control of the Pacific, our backyard, and some of our neighbours appear to be taking sides. Samoa's just signed a mysterious technical cooperation agreement with China, though details of the deal are scarce. Meanwhile, Fiji is joining a new American economic initiative aimed at countering China's power. It comes as China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi tours the Pacific, seeking a region-wide security and trade deal with these 10 countries, described by some as a game changer for the balance of power in the region. Meanwhile, newly elected Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong, well, she's been in Fiji on the weekend with regional security high on the agenda. Joining us this morning, Canterbury University Chinese politics professor Anne-Marie Brady, who's in the United States. Good morning. Thank you for being with us this morning. Is the West losing power? Is the West losing control of the Pacific?
Morena, I first of all would disagree with your framing that China and the US are battling for control of the Pacific. The situation in the Pacific is you've got independent countries who've enjoyed peace and stability for nearly 80 years and who have a series of security agreements themselves to support each other's security. And now you have an outside power, China, an outside hostile power, trying to impose a security agreement across the region. And it's rather like the co-prosperity sphere that Japan proposed for the whole of the Pacific.
You say hostile power. Why so?
Well, actually, that's the word that the Ministry of Defence in New Zealand used in their strategic assessment last December, which you can find on their website. So they said that if a hostile power, and China's the only one they're talking about, was to be able to control or dominate one of these islands in the Pacific, that would have an immediate negative impact on our security. And the Australians have said similar. So China is pursuing a military agenda in the Pacific, which it's just unfortunate for all of us that our geography is strategically important to China, as it once was to Imperial Japan and the Soviet Union. You know, those island nations that China's been working with, like the Solomons, they're located close to the sea lanes of communication where our exports and imports come along, but also really crucial in times of a military conflict. So if a country who has an intention to change the strategic order, which we've benefited from peace for more than 70 years, is to put a military emplacements or civil military emplacements, which is what China has been doing in recent years, for example, airstrips that it's been developing in countries like Kiribati and Vanuatu, then that could be used to blockade and cut off Australia, New Zealand, France, and the United States from defending the Pacific. You know, we are all small states in the Pacific with the exception of Australia. We actually can't defend ourselves, and at a time of war, when we partner and participate together.
So you're saying that they could potentially blockade, basically lock us in or lock us out, not just militarily, but trade as well?
Yeah, that's the point of having control or dominance in these islands. Ryan, you might have heard of the island chains idea. There's 1, 2, 3 island chains. And they're crucial for China's security, and they're crucial also for the wider Indo-Pacific security. So the first island chain goes from Japan down to Taiwan. The second island chain is an archipelago south of Japan, includes the Philippines. The third island chain goes from the very top of the North Pacific all the way down to Guam and then to New Zealand. It's more of a metaphorical one. It's what used to be called the US defence line, but it's also our defence line. And it's as I said, that strategic geography, which we see each time there's a power shift, a major power shift in international politics, you see the contesting power wanting to take control on those strategic islands. So we can't change the geography, but we can do what we need to do, which is defend ourselves and work with our Pacific partners, who you might have noticed that many of them spoke up against the Solomons security
Yes.
agreement with China.
Yes, some of them also, though, not really feeling the love from New Zealand and Australia recently, particularly through the pandemic, which is interesting. Just a question for you before we go. For those who are watching this morning and who are thinking, gosh, this sounds, slightly, mildly alarming, what is the time frame here, do you think, for the Chinese to get these deals in place, to build those relationships, to have the access militarily or otherwise to be able to do something like this? I mean, what kind of time frame are we talking, Anne-Marie?
Well, it's been a blitzkrieg in the last couple of weeks. Things are moving very, very fast. And China is doing exactly what our defence analysts predicted. Unfortunately, our government does move slowly, and same with the Australians, and our defence forces are simply not equipped for what we need to do now, is to be able to defend our own massive maritime territory. We've got the 4th largest maritime territory in the world. So you can see our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, was talking approvingly about the US presence in our region and encouraging the US to be more active here. That's a signal for what we're looking for. We are seeking shelter with the United States. And that may seem surprising to people, but when we talk about an independent foreign policy that we have in our country, that doesn't mean neutrality. It means that we make our own decisions. And we are making our own decisions here and saying that we're not happy with the behaviour of China, the military activities and quasi-military activities, such as offering police support across the region, is completely unnecessary. We already have regional partnerships that are dealing with existing security issues, and our government signalled that very clearly. It's a matter of, I just don't know how quickly they can rally to do anything about this big new cross-Pacific security agreement that Wang Yi is here to negotiate.
Yeah, it certainly looks like we're on the back foot there, doesn't it? Thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. Always value your insights, Anne-Marie. University of Canterbury Chinese politics specialist, Professor Anne-Marie Brady, with us from the States this morning.